Welcome, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started since it is 5 o'clock, and we are excited to be here with you all. Good evening and welcome. We know that people will continue to join, and they can join in at whatever point they can, but we will keep it flowing for this evening. I'm Nicole Jolly, the Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Urban League of Louisiana. We are here this evening as a part of the Urban League's 2020 Census Initiative, which is called VOICE and stands for Voicing Our Information for Census Equity. And that is exactly why we are here tonight. We know the critical role that HBCUs play in our community, and they also have a critical role to play in making sure that all of our communities, our students, our families, and neighbors are aware of the 2020 census. So this HBCU challenge is a part of our overall umbrella VOICE initiative. 4 student interns who were selected as part of a competitive process last fall, 2 of whom will be your MCs for this evening. But all 4 of them have been working very hard for the last several months in raising awareness and educating folks about the importance of the census. And of course, they've all completed the census themselves already. But I will kick it over to 2 of our interns who will be serving as your MCs for this evening, Miss Jillian and Elsie. I'll hand it over to you.
Well, welcome everyone to the 2020 HBCU Tele-Town Hall on the 2020 Census. I'm Jillian Harris and I attend Xavier University.
Hello, I am Kelsey Marie Piron and I attend Southern University. We are the Urban League of Louisiana's 2020 Voice interns and we will be facilitating tonight's town hall.
Today's webinar is being recorded and all participants are in listen-only mode. We will have a Q&A portion at the end, so throughout the presentation, if you do have any questions, please send them in the chat. We will also have a few words from university presidents, so we'd like to thank them for being with us. And now I'd like to introduce Judy Reese-Morris, President and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana, who will give a few words of welcome.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Thanks to you, Kelsey, as well, and to our fearless leader in this effort, Nicole Jolly, who is the Urban League's Director of Strategic Initiatives. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you all for being a part of the Urban League of Louisiana's HBCU Census Challenge. We are excited to have every HBCU in Louisiana represented at this Tele-Town Hall, and we are so grateful to all of our university presidents that are with us to speak, as well as one of our national partners, Fair Count, along with our student representatives. We all share a commitment to a complete count in 2020, and that is why we are here, because it is so important to our communities. The Urban League of Louisiana has been engaging in education and awareness efforts for the past year, and now that the census is live, it's taking action to make sure that our communities are counted. The HBCU Challenge is just one part of our efforts, but it is a critical part. You will hear great information tonight, so please listen closely and pay attention. But most importantly, we hope that you realize the role that you can play in making sure that we have a complete count in 2020. Each of you are trusted voices, and we can help to encourage others to be counted. And that is what the Urban League of Louisiana is asking you to do, to be the trusted voice that you are and to reach out near and wide to make sure that everyone that you know is participating in the census. Please know that the Urban League is here as a partner and as a resource, so please continue to work with us in this shared effort. Again, thank you so much for being with us this evening, and it's going to be a great, great town hall.
Thank you so much, President Morris, for those warm words of welcome. We'll now like to invite our university presidents to introduce themselves and say a few words of why the census is important to their campuses. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Walter Kimbrough.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm glad that you're here and part of this town hall. I actually reached out to Allison Plyer, who's over the data center here, but she's actually on the National Census Committee, and just asked her what kinds of things would you have me share with everyone. And she reminds me that this is very important because the census will help determine where resources are allocated, how districts are drawn, and particularly for HBCU students. A lot of times, presidents, we hear our students say, I need additional money, I need federal money, I need financial aid. And a lot of times it's not because the institution doesn't have the money, it's because the federal money that's available for you. So it's very important that we have an accurate count. I was on a call this morning that said in 2010, African Americans were undercounted by about 3.7 million. The projection this time is about 4 million. So we've got to make sure everyone is counted. And it's important as well that everyone is registered where they go to school, because that's where those dollars will help you as you matriculate through. So this is a very important project. I hope we get excited. It's going to be extra hard this year because we've got this pandemic going on. So we've got to really be mobilized and keep focused on this. So I'm excited to be here and excited to hear my colleagues.
Next, I'd like to introduce Richard Gallo, Jr., President of Grambling State University.
Well, good evening from the place where everybody is somebody, Grambling State University. I'm very pleased to be able to share a few words with all of you watching this evening. It's like deja vu. 10 years ago, I was a member of the Louisiana House of Representatives, and I was the chairman of the redistricting committee that redrew all of the lines. Of course, we were in post-Hurricane Katrina mode. We had lost so much population that as a result of the census and our population having decreased significantly, we lost congressional seat, and there was a major shift in legislative districts. And so I say all that background to say it's very important that we count every person who's here in the state, or you may temporarily be away because of the pandemic. But we hear often every vote counts. It is also very important that every person is counted in the census. I'll give you another example how just a few people being missed can have a major impact. To be a city in Louisiana, you have to have 5,000 people. Well, in Grambling, the last census, it was 4,949. We know that there was an undercounting in Grambling, but because of that, we are classified as a town versus a city. That impacts money, that impacts resources, that impacts a number of different things. So it's so incredibly important that everyone take time in this digital age. It's so incredibly easy. I did mine online on my phone, so it's very easy to do, and certainly want to encourage everyone to ensure that they complete their census information and get it in. And again, thank you for the opportunity to participate tonight.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Dr. Ray L. Belton, President and Chancellor at the Southern University.
Well, good evening to everyone, and allow me to bring greetings on behalf of the entirety of the Southern University system, and particularly Southern University of Baton Rouge. It is really a pleasure of mine to be joined with my colleagues and this family of Louisiana HBCUs to really kind of bring a focus on what I consider to be an important responsibility to all of us and for all of us to ensure that the census is actually counted. And I really believe that it's an opportunity to us to not just count for the sake of count, but to ensure that federal resources are distributed equitably and to programs that disproportionately have an impact in minority communities. You know, interestingly enough, I have always felt that HBCUs have a duty and a responsibility to drive community engagement. And one of our core values at the institution is to, as well as to not only produce scholars, but also to produce leaders who are forthright in bringing about the needed change in our respective communities. And I like to give a shout out to Kelsey, who really reflects that kind of student to whom we take great pleasure in grooming. But you know, these resources, I'm talking about resources that are determined simply by account, that directly determine whether or not community programs and services, you know, can be facilitated. Programs like community action programs, lunch programs, you know, child care centers, to some degree, you know, making a determination where a shopping center or a movie theater, you know, may be. And so oftentimes we think about the census count as being that mechanism that will determine how many seats will be defined in a congressional election and or a state. But this is very important in terms of providing resources to communities who by definition have a role in shaping the quality of life of our respective communities. So again, I think it's an imperative, and I'm really pleased that Southern University is on the forefront and really trying to push out the count for 2020.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have Dr. James Ammons Jr., Interim Chancellor of Southern University at New Orleans.
Thank you, Jillian. And I want to thank President and CEO of the Urban League of Louisiana, Judy Roos Moore, and her staff for hosting this important town hall meeting. And I also want to thank my President and Chancellor colleagues who lead some of the most important institutions of higher education in America for the role that all of us are playing in bringing attention to this important initiative. Our message is very simple and clear: 9, 10, 10. There are only 9 questions on the census. 9 simple questions like your name, address, race, national origin, and the name of those that live in the household with you. 10. It usually takes about 10 minutes to fill out the census online, by phone, or by paper application. And lastly, and probably most importantly, the 10-year impact. Filling out the census may take just 10 minutes, but will have a profound impact on the next 10 years. Particularly in New Orleans, this census is extremely important to get an accurate account of who really lives in our city so that we can benefit from the much needed resources that come as a result of the census. You know, this may be the first time that some of our students have completed the census and understand how the census can impact their everyday lives. The results will directly affect federal government funding, as we have already heard, such as Pell Grants and financial aid for college. The census is also an important tool used by the government to determine political representation, inform business development and investment, particularly the ones in need. And in essence, it affects areas that contribute to our quality of life. So to all of you who are on this call, I'm calling on you, no matter what organization or university that you represent, to make it your duty to ensure that everyone that we know knows that we just have to answer 9 questions that take about 10 minutes to impact the next 10 years. This small individual effort will have a profound collective impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next, we'll have Dr. Rodney Ellis from the Chancellor of Southern University at Shreveport.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for having me and inviting me to participate in this monumentous opportunity. I'm glad that we are utilizing HBCUs to help be a voice for the census as well as other social initiatives in the community. That's a long-standing role that we played in the community. And so, again, to my president and my colleague, Dr. Ray L. Belton and Dr. James Ammons, thank you for allowing me to participate as well. Southern University at Shreveport is the community college, or the two-year arm of the Southern University system, serving Northwest Louisiana, and proud to be the only HBCU two-year community college in the state of Louisiana. So for me, as a political science major, and having heard a lot of the comments from students about, and particularly the sense of disenfranchisement, that they don't feel that they have a voice. And for us, helping them to see how this impacts their ability to shape change is extremely important. We know that, as Dr. Gallo mentioned, the census helps shape the number of federal representatives. It helps shape the number of electorals we have in the Electoral College. That was a big controversy within the last 4 years of the presidential election. And most important, it helps to our students and other citizens within the state have a voice in how we shape our country. And so things that we have really done, I think one of the things that we do well is form partnerships with other entities. The Urban League has been on our campus, but locally we formed a partnership with the Power Coalition, an advocacy group to help get out the vote, to get the count up for the census. And those entities are working with our students, working with our leadership, so that they understand how important this is to help shape their voice in the political spectrum. And in particular, one very important aspect of that too is one simple thing. We have had signs up all over campus saying, join the census. The pay for those particular jobs have been extremely high compared to the minimum wage. And so a number of our students have gone out to become census takers. And so for our particular population that may have social economic challenges, it's also been an avenue to earn a living wage during this time when we know that COVID-19 is ravaging our economic system. So we're proud to be a part of this, and we look forward to being a voice for our students and for Louisiana.
Thank you so much for those words, Dr. Ellis. Lastly, we will have Dr. Reynolds Barrett, president of the illustrious Xavier University of Louisiana.
Thank you very much, Judy, and the Urban League team. Thank you for making this happen. Let me frame this and remind us that we need to vote. We also need to be counted in the census. And let me ask us the question: we think we are counting and voting for ourselves. We're also counting and voting for the people who live around us, our communities. It's important that we get that not only do we get counted because it brings resources to our communities, even if you do not need the resources, there's a child, there's a family, there are older people who need you to be counted. So the work that we are doing is not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. With the coronavirus, we have an example of exactly what it means. We think about protecting ourselves, but the only strategy that actually helps is assuming that I am infected and that I should not be infecting anyone else. So it's about protecting other people as well. We vote for ourselves, we vote for other people, we get counted for other people. It's important that we build our communities, because as we are doing this for our HBCUs, we are doing this for our schools. Many of you are about to graduate. You may not be the one who benefits, but there are young people like yourselves who will benefit as you leave. We do this for others, we build community. We came through this together as a people, and we are going to complete this as a people. Everyone needs to be counted. And I would ask you not only to think about your filling out the census, but also to reach out to members of your family, your networks, to remind people that they can fill out the census. Dr. Amos may have mentioned that it may take 10 minutes. I think it took me 6. That's about it. So really, it's an easy thing to do, and you can help other people and work them through and help them walk through the census and get it done. Because if we do not bring the resources to our community, we are failing them and we fail ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our university presidents for speaking on why the census is so important to our campuses, as well as joining us tonight. The purpose of today's town hall is to inform HBCU students about the census and its impact on our communities. We'll talk about what exactly is the census, why is it so important, and what HBC students as ourselves can do to ensure that we have a fair and accurate count. We'll also hear from Dr. Janine Abrams-McLean, Vice President at Fair Count, a national organization dedicated to finding solutions for achieving a fair and accurate count in the 2026. Now we'll have our icebreaker. In true HBCU form, we'll have a roll call of all the schools. So tonight, our top 2 schools that had the most students registered was Xavier and Dillard. So let's give it up for them. So we'll have a poll on the screen in order for you to click and see what HBCU you attend. You can either comment in the chat or answer the poll.
So first we'll have Xavier University.
Then the illustrious Southern University at Baton Rouge.
Next we'll have Dillard University.
Now we'll have Southern University at Shreveport.
Now we'll have Grambling State University.
And last but not least, Southern University at New Orleans. Okay. So the most students that we have on the call right now is Xavier University. Then next up is the Southern University system. So all 3 of our universities that are a part. Then Dillard University and Grambling State University. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We are so happy to have all you guys and for being so proactive in being change agents in your communities and on your campuses. So what exactly is the census? We will show a short video about what is the census by our Urban League Voice interns James Mason and John West. So the census is basically a self-portrait of America that determines our representation and where resources are allocated for the next 10 years. The data that comes from the census affects our school systems, our childcare systems, local public safety such as fire stations where police stations are, healthcare and social services like Medicaid and Medicare, economic development, roads and highway construction, which I know all of us across Louisiana are very familiar with, especially us in Baton Rouge, and as well as political representation. How many seats are we allocated in Congress? How many electoral votes are we given in the Electoral College? So all this information is very, very important, and it lasts for the next 10 years.
So college students usually fall within 3 categories. There's those who live on campus, those who live off campus, and those who live with their parents. So if you live on campus, your university will count you. However, if you live off campus, you should be completing one questionnaire that includes everyone you live with and that stays with you. And if you live with your parents should be putting you on their census as part of their household. And next, we're going to talk about how the census impacts students. So one of the main ways that many college students are able to pay for their education is through Pell Grants. And the Pell Grant program provides need-based federal financial aid to qualifying low-income students and is one of the top 5 federal programs with funding determined by census data. And also different areas of education such as STEM programs are impacted by federal funding, and those are critical resources that colleges depend on. Student wellness and mental health programs are also services that are critical for schools and that are very important for students on campus. And funding for those resources depends on students being counted in the right place each census. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Janine Abrams-McLean, Vice President at Fair Count, who will tell us about the specific impacts on people of color in hard-to-count communities.
Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. Hi,
Yes.
Janine.
So my name is Janine Abrams-McLean. I am the Vice President at Fair Count. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that is focused on making sure that everyone is counted in the census, as well as building pathways to continued civic engagement. I've had the utmost pleasure of working with the Urban League of Louisiana in the past and right now. And so I'd like to thank them for inviting me to come and speak to you today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the census impacts our community, specifically the Black community. So there was a study done by the Urban Institute that estimated the potential undercount of different communities across in different racial and ethnic backgrounds. They estimated that 1.7 million Black people could be missed in the 2020 census. And so when we talk about federal funding and the amount of funding that goes to each state, it varies by state, by person, right? So in Georgia, it's around $3,600 per person, meaning that for every person counted, the state gets $3,600 in federal funding. And conversely, for every person missed, the state loses out on that funding. So if this undercount that is predicted occurs across the states, all 50 states in the District of Columbia, if the Black population is undercounted at that rate, our communities around the nation could lose over $3 billion in federal funding every year for the next 10 years. And so that's just if Black people are not counted. When we look specifically at Louisiana, the Urban Institute estimated that 62,300 people in Louisiana could be undercounted in the census. And so when we look at that number, the vast majority of those people who are being undercounted are Black people. So we're looking at about 55,000 Black people who are at risk of being undercounted in the census. And then when you look at the slide, you can see Hispanic, Asian, and API, as well as young children. Another number that is not on there is the number of people that are potentially at risk of being undercounted between the ages of 18 and 29. And so you're looking at college students. I know some college students who graduated when they were 29, so we're going to throw them in there too. And so when we look at college age students or people between 18 and 29, they have estimated that around 11,300 people between that age in the state of Louisiana could be at risk of being undercounted. And so we need to make sure that we, just as everybody has said, that we participate in the census and that we encourage others to do it. The next thing I'll say is there's a difference. You'll hear people talk about undercounts, and then you'll hear people talk about omissions. Omissions are people who are just flat out missed in the census. They are not counted. In 2010, 3.8 million Black people were missed, flat out missed in the census. They weren't counted at all. And so we have to make sure that that Black people across the nation, and when I say Black, I don't mean African American. I'm talking about anyone who considers themselves Black, whether you are an immigrant, whether you are documented or undocumented. Remember, the census does not count citizens, it counts the people. And so when we talk about Black, or our Blackness is shared. So we need to make sure that everyone is counted, and it's especially important for Black immigrants because they're often left out of the conversation. So we want to make sure that we encourage our Black immigrant family and friends to also participate in the census. The census has been going on for a while now. Actually, this week, the Census Bureau at this point is mailing out paper forms to everyone who has not responded in the census at this point. And so we know that as of today, across the nation, about 46.7% of households across the nation have participated in the census. But in Louisiana, and it's at the rate in Louisiana is 43.2%. So a little bit under the national average. But we are also in the middle of a pandemic. And we know that one of the epicenters or hotspots for this pandemic is right in Louisiana. And so we have to keep all of that take all of that into account as well. One number that people aren't paying as much attention to because it's not being highly publicized is the response rate of different racial groups. And so when we look at that 40 as of last week, when we look at the percentage of households in predominantly white communities that have responded to the census, on April 2nd, that was 42% of households in predominantly white census tracts have responded to the census. Unfortunately, when we looked at Black communities, we are underperforming. And so at the same time, only 35% of households in predominantly Black communities were responding to the census. So we have a lot more work to do to make sure that we catch up, because it's basically mirroring what we saw in 2010, which was that in the census, white homeowning populations were overcounted, meaning they were counted more than once, and Black households or Black households were undercounted. And so we need to make sure that we get everybody engaged and excited to do the census. I do want to say that in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I just want to back up a second, that estimation of 1.7 million Black people being undercounted in the census happened before the onset of the pandemic. And another thing that we're seeing, and I'll just give you a little bit of my background. Prior to coming to Fair Count, I was a biologist at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention here in Atlanta. And one of the things I can tell you that we are seeing, and you're seeing it on the news that's just now being reported, is that because of health disparities, the Black community is actually being impacted disproportionately compared to other communities by this virus. And so we need to, and when that estimate of 1.7 million was calculated, it didn't take into account a pandemic, nor that the pandemic would disproportionately affect Black communities. So we have a little bit more work that we have to do to combat what's going on in the midst of this pandemic. And the last thing I'm going to say is specific to HBCUs. In the wake of the pandemic, a lot of, or if not most or all, colleges and universities have closed down, and you're doing online classes, and while everybody is social distancing. In the way that the Census Bureau counts colleges and universities is that you're counted as group quarters, meaning that there's one count for everyone who lives on the campus. So just like the young women showed you, whether you live on campus, you live off campus, or you live with your parents. One of the issues that we've seen, and this impacts college students, is that now that people have been sent back home, there's a lot of confusion about how to be counted. And part of that is because colleges and universities can choose how to count the students. The best way for the colleges to count the students is to send the records directly to the Census Bureau. So do not pass go, do not collect $200, send it straight to the Census Bureau, who's on campus, who's living here, and their information. There are 3 other options, and one of them is to have someone from the Census Bureau come and actually count students in the dorms. I spoke to someone who was a census taker in 2010, and she was sent to a college to count the students, and she was only able, because that particular school requested in-person counting, she was only able to get the information for 2 dorms at one entire college. And so we want to make sure, and advocates and organizations around the country are really hoping and pressuring colleges and universities to opt into just sending the records directly to the Census Bureau. And so that is my ask, my plea for everyone of the college officials, college and university officials that are on here right now. We're working with the Congressional Black Caucus to put out a call to all HBCUs around the country so that they will just go ahead and do the most effective and efficient enumeration, which is to send those numbers directly to the Census Bureau. And so that's my ask of y'all. I am just so proud to see that there are students on here, and I want you to make sure that you go out, you tell everybody, not just the folks you go to school with. I want you to tell your friends who are, hanging out at home, hey, you're sitting here watching TV and doing TikTok videos. Go ahead and take that time to fill out the census. And with that, I will end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next, we'll hear from Traylon Rogers, Dillard University's SGA president, on what HBCU students can do to ensure an accurate count.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Traylon Rogers. Like they said, I'm the SGA president at Dillard University. I didn't get to do the poll earlier, so I'm sure we would have won with my extra vote. But I think that one of the most important things that we can do as students is to stop some of the myths that come along with the census. A lot of people who are not citizens of the United States are afraid to take the census, not knowing that the census can't share that information until 72 years later. So the most recent census that was shared would be the 1950 census, which is 72 years from, 72 years ago would be 1948, sorry, but the census for that was 1950. So even if you're not a citizen of the United States, you can still submit that because it won't be used for the immigration services, or it won't be sent anywhere except for the Census Bureau. Another myth that we don't see, or another reason for us to stop myths, is because there are several states in the United States that are up for seats, congressional seats, and some will also lose them. So depending on the amount of people that have left the country left the state since 2010, they can lose some of the congressional seats. Louisiana is on track to get 0 seats based off of the numbers of the populations. But if everybody's counted, if everyone isn't counted, they can lose seats. So while they may not be gaining seats, we can lose seats in Louisiana if students aren't counted. Another thing that students can do to ensure that people are counted is to be a part of a complete count committee. And these are members of your community leaders. These are local elected officials. You can go on census.gov and see how to join a complete count committee. And it's a way on this committee, they come up with ways to make sure that people are counting in their communities. You can work for the Census Bureau. They don't knock on doors as they used to because everything's online. But what will happen is if students and your parents and your relatives, if people don't fill out the census, they will start going to doors. and making sure people fill out the census. So it's a safer job than it was many years before. And I think it's an easier job, and they pay well depending on the area that you live in. So I think that's another way students can get, you can get temporary employment from that, and you can also make sure that people in your community are counted. I think the largest thing is that a cultural shift needs to happen, which can start with our generation, to make it okay to fill out the census, and to make it important to fill out the census. And it should be a part of our regular conversations on a day-to-day basis, to make sure that people in our community have been counted, and that we are successfully represented not only in Congress, but in dollars as well. So the money's going to go wherever the bodies are. And if the bodies are in our communities and they're not counted, then we won't get that funding, and we won't get that representation in Congress or anywhere else. But I think those are the most important things in the ways that students can get involved. And I also think that social media is a big presence that we didn't have in the 2010 census. And I know that the Gen Z, Gen X, and millennials are all on social media, and that's an entirely new platform that people can that you can reach people on. TikToks can be used to reach people. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There's so many different platforms that we can reach people, and I think that if we use those, especially being students who attend institutions of higher learning, we can come up with some creative ways to make sure that everybody in our community is counted. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Traylon, for joining us tonight and speaking on what do you think us students can do in order to ensure accurate count. So we're going to take this time to allow some of our university presidents to speak on what are they doing on their campuses in order to make sure that their students in as well as ourselves are being counted. So first we'll have Dr. Belton speak on what's going on at Southern University.
Sure, and if you will, allow me just to applaud the students who are participating in this evening town hall meeting. You're just truly impressive, and I truly appreciate the leadership to which you have invested in promoting census completion. Southern University, we are fortunate to have the opportunity of impacting as many as 13,000 students across the state of Louisiana. And I think our philosophy has been in this effort to do what has worked. Last November or last fall, as we engaged in the gubernatorial election, I think all of our campuses, and actually Kelsey was very instrumental in this as well, was very active in calling out our colleagues and peers to vote. And I think in each one of the metropolitan areas to which our campuses were housed, I think our influence was very telling. Even now, through Kelsey's leadership, we are really promoting on our respective campuses email blasts and social media channels to educate students about, those myths about that Mr. Rogers spoke about, and more importantly, the imperative to complete the census instrument. And so we're creating graphics and tips about the status of our efforts, but more importantly, really encouraging everyone to understand how important it is and how it directly affects not only themselves, but the communities to which we reside. So again, I'm just really excited about our ongoing effort. And actually, I learned something this evening from Dr. McLean. I wasn't aware that our campus had the wherewithal to submit that data. And so we would like to possibly get back with you to get some additional clarification about how to do that. Again, thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Dr. Belton. Next, we'll have Dr. Verrett.
Good evening. Very briefly, I just wanted to remind us that at Xavier, we exist for one thing, to contribute to the more just and humane society. Being counted in the census is what we are called to do. We are counted We get our friends to be counted, our families and friends. We make sure it happens because that's what society needs from us at this moment in time. And everybody be safe, be safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we'll have Dr. Rodney Ellis from Southern University at Shreveport.
Yes, good evening once again, and definitely very impressed with the students who led this conversation. As Dr. Belton mentioned, system-wide, we have a system initiative to really kind of push out the information about the students getting involved with the census. And at Southern University of Shreveport, we continue to participate in that initiative. In addition to that, locally, as I mentioned earlier, we have formed partnerships with the NAACP, with Power Coalition and other nonprofits in the area to inform our students, but also to activate our students in working to count, get a count out among their colleagues, as well as the other student mentioned, how they can get involved in temporary employment. And so we look forward to continuing our efforts. And again, thanks to the Urban League of Louisiana for hosting this webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Next, we'll have Dr. James Ammons Jr., Interim Chancellor of Southern University at New Orleans.
Thank you very much. And I want to just continue the conversation about the importance of our students and the involvement of our students in the census, and also to congratulate our interns, Kelsey and Jillian, and to just say to all of the students, as President Belton and others have said today, the important role that you play in influencing your colleagues to be a part of this all-important initiative. At Southern University, New Orleans, we have been working with our students for months now on the 2020 census through weekly text messages, emails, and social media outlets. A series of virtual meetings are scheduled with local census representatives to account for students who are presently in residential housing. We posted information regarding the census on the university's social media outlets to encourage the student body to join the census challenge by posting on their social media pages as well. We're continuing to collect data on how many people who have completed the census in the city of New Orleans and compare it to other parishes across the state of Louisiana. We also encourage retention counselors to create a comprehensive marketing campaign to add the quote 9-10-10 because the impact of this census is so important for the future of our students. And then we're also creating links and surveys to post on the university's website to respond regarding students' understanding of the census. So those are some of the things that we're doing at SUNO to make certain that we have full participation of our student body in the 2020 census. Thank you. And everyone stay safe and happy Easter.
Thank you, Dr. Amos. So we're going to talk a little bit about what as interns have been doing to ensure that HBCU students are making sure that communities are being counted for and the counts are accurate. So we actually, on Census Day, which was April 1st, we set out our HBCU challenge, which was the day it started. And we did the video, which was shown at the beginning of the presentation, as well as started a social media challenge, which we'll get into a little bit later on, so you can figure out how you can participate in it for your various schools. And basically what we did was we utilized all of our social media platforms, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anything that we knew that we could reach out to our fellow students, our email addresses, because we all know that all of us are sitting in front of a computer all day in order to get our schoolwork done. So we wanted to make sure that we were finding creative ways in order to get in contact with people. Jillian was able to get in contact with over I think it was like 30,000 people views on the video on her social media platform. So that is kind of what we are doing to make sure that our HBCU students are being accounted for and that our communities know that they need to be accounted as well, especially among this pandemic that we have. So now we're going to go into our question and answer. We do have one question so far, and please feel free to ask any more questions as we're speaking. So our first question is, are colleges going to send out emails directing off-campus students to make sure to respond at their normal pre-pandemic off-campus school addresses? I know for a fact that Southern University has sent out a memo saying that students who live at certain off-campus facilities in the Baton Rouge area to make sure that they still fill out their census for their roommates and themselves at that location and not at their home location if they were to go back home. So if you are staying at like a student apartment complex, you are supposed to fill out your own census for you and your roommates. I did it on my phone for me and my two roommates. It took me a total of 5 minutes. So and I did it off my phone. I didn't have to use a computer or anything else.
Okay, so our next question is it too late to fill out the census? And if not, how do we access it? So Kelsey, do you want to take that one?
Yes, so it is not too late to fill out the census. I may be wrong on the deadline, but I believe they extended the deadline until late June or like late summer. Considering
August 14th.
Say that again.
August 14th. It's been extended to August 14th will be the last day as of now, unless it gets extended again.
So, of course, considering the situation that we're in all across this country, it has been extended to August 14th. So all you have to do is you can use one of the 3 platforms right here. So you can go online to my2020census.gov. You are supposed to receive a invitation in the mail with a code that you can input. So you can either use that code, or for myself, I did it when I went home for a weekend. So I just inputted my address, my apartment address, and I did it that way. So you can either use the invitation code or you can do it through your address. You can do it by phone as well. You can call 844-330-2020 to fill out your census. And you can also do it by mail. You can call 888-839-8632 for more information of how you can receive a paper survey.
Okay, so the next question is, if your parents put you down on the census, should you still apply individually? No. If your parents put you down on the census, then you do not have to worry about filling it out because you have already been counted. And the next question is, how will we know if our university is opted into reporting the census for on-campus students? So Kelsey, would you like to take that one?
I would personally believe that if you are questioning it, you should reach out to your various universities and ask them, have they opted in? We did have all university presidents online tonight. So if they did not know that there was a different option considering the pandemic at hand, then now they know and they'll be able to, and we'll feel free to reach out to give them more information if they so need it.
And the next question is, what if your school did report you and your parents counted you on their census too? Will it cancel out? I don't believe it will cancel out. And I'm going to be honest, I do not know. However, if your school counted you and your parents counted you, as long as you're counted in general, that's just good. But I do not know the answer to that question, unfortunately.
Can I answer that?
I can jump in real quick. Oh, Janine, you want this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
The
Census Bureau has ways to deduplicate. And so if you are counted more than once, it's basically it's better. They have ways to pull you off. It's easier to take people off the rolls than it is to add them. So so they have mechanisms.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, and it looks like those are all the questions that we have now. So I think
back to the challenge real quick.
Okay, so we can go now into the instructions for our challenge. So we showed you how you and your families can respond to the census. So what we are challenging you to do is to post a video or a picture of you completing your census and tag #ULLA_voice, and then use your various schools hashtag. So you'll have all the school hashtags on the screen. We are doing to where we will randomly choose out of the people who participated, they will win an electronic gift card. So I know all of us love free money, especially as college students. So definitely make sure that you participate into the challenge and make sure that you are being counted. So in conclusion, we would like to thank all you guys for coming out today and to make sure that you know that it is very important for us to use our platform as HBCU students and HBCUs in our community to make sure that we reach out to our family members and people in our community to make sure that they're being counted for, make sure that that it is an accurate count and that we're getting the resources and the representation that we need in order to make sure that our communities and our schools thrive. So as our call to action to you is to not only fill out the census for yourself, but to make sure to reach out to at least 3 other people that you know and ask them, hey, did you fill out the census? And make sure to stay on them until they fill it out and make sure that they participate in the challenge as well.
I'd also like to thank everybody.
Don't forget our polls.
Oh, yes. So we're going to continue to do a poll really quickly. So our first poll is, have you filled out your census yet? Oh, wow, that's great. So majority of the people have said that 72% of everybody that is online has filled out their census and has been counted. So kudos to you guys, that is great. And it is also great to know that those who have not filled out their census will be filling out their census. Our next poll that we'll be doing is, how are you going to take action, or what kind of actions will you be taking in order to make sure that everybody in our community are accurately accounted for? So 92% said to make sure that my family members are being counted, 63% to make sure that they're going to post on social media and tag their campus. And then we have 54 people who said they're going to call 10 people to tell them why they need to be counted. Those are great, excellent ways to make sure that you are doing your part to make sure that our communities are accurately counted and being represented for. So again, we'd like to say to make sure that you guys are reaching out to your family members, tagging us on social media, and make sure that you're participating in our challenge in order to win that gift card.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, especially the students who showed up to support Kelsey and I, and also our fellow interns. And now I'm just going to pass it off to Nicole.
First of all, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our university presidents for all joining us this evening. Thank you, Dr. McLean. Thank you, interns. You all have done a fantastic job, and all of our work is just beginning. As has been said many times this evening, we all have a part to play. There's something that every single one of us can do. We need to be telling everybody, because again, as we started off saying, we are all trusted messengers. We all know somebody who doesn't have information about this, maybe doesn't know how to complete it or doesn't know why it impacts them. And the reality is it impacts every single one of us. So please take the call to action. Do what you said you were going to do in that last poll. And with that, we are going to close exactly on time because we did this so well. We want to let everybody know that this has been, as we said at the beginning, we can make it available. So we did have a question about making the PowerPoint presentation available. We have multiple PowerPoints as well as additional flyers, videos, resources at the Urban League's Census webpage, which is urbanleaguela.org/voice. Our site and access all kinds of resources, and we will also be posting the recording of this webinar so that you can use it, refer to it, and all that good stuff. So thank you again. Go complete your census if you have not. Go call your people. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Leave.